quick updates that we're live.
Okay, cool. We are connected.
Okay.
We are connected. Where is... here comes the video. Boom. And
here comes
we're
the
here.
dynamite.
BB Defender's first in the chat. So good evening, Mr. Defender. And we're ready whenever you are, Josh.
Excellent. All right, great. Let me just get all my little ducks in a row here, which should just take me another second or two. One thing I noticed when we moved from the Slack, which now feels like such a long time ago, the Slack that we used to be on, we moved from the Slack to the Discord. When I was in Slack, I felt very anxious about doing the @everyone tag, But now that we're in Discord, that people do it all the time. I'm out of a Discord for 6 hours. I see 47 notifications on my little, my little tab on the left-hand side.
It's a little more active for sure.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's jump into this then. Ready for a proper start here?
Let's go.
Hey, all cheaters. Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon, happy pre-Thanksgiving to you.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Yeah, being up here in Canada, I was asking my barber, what's the difference between American Thanksgiving or I said Thanksgiving and Canadian Thanksgiving? And they said, well, we don't call it Canadian Thanksgiving for one.
It's the first reused joke of the pod. I think you literally used that like 3 days ago on the pod.
I think that was pre-recording, so that doesn't count.
Okay,
we'll put that in the original joke column.
That's true. It was new to the listeners. It was not new to me. This is like when your spouse tells a story that you've heard many times before, and you're like, yes.
You just have to suffer through everything I say, Josh, for sure.
Exactly.
But I'm feeling good. Yeah, it's like starting to feel like festive FPL suddenly. We were
that is true.
Bemoaning international breaks for a couple of weeks, and now all I can think about is how it's going to be nonstop FPL, festive fixtures, etc. for weeks and months to come.
I'm looking forward to it. This weekend was, I guess it was okay. I mean, I'm almost definitely going to end up on a red arrow in the end. I actually was on a small green before, but you're the one who's kind of surging now, right? And I feel like, I mean, you a couple things went well, but I think it was really the big thing was Pedro Porro, right? And I think you sort of leaned into something that we've been talking about a little bit, which is that it's just really not an especially well. I suppose I actually did make a plus expected value defender move this week, bringing in Gabriel for Arsenal, but that was kind of forced because Trent was injured. But I think in your case, you debated some defender moves, ultimately decided no. All the options are bad. I'm just going to start Pedro Porro and hope something good can happen, right? And it worked out great.
That's precisely it. And sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. I'm not going to profess to be a genius, but I had planned to start Konsa, Mikolenko, and Anthony Robinson. 4 home fixtures, 4 decent defenders. With Konsa out, that was the opportunity to spend one of my 2 free transfers on a defensive move. And I was sizing up Timber and also Lewis Hall, who will play on Monday night. When Timber scored the offside goal early, I thought, I should have just gone for it. But little did I know how much I was going to be rewarded. And that 14 points brings me up to a total of 64 on the week. And my overall rank now, I'm jumping up to 404K. So I'm easily inside the top 500K for the week now, assuming like Isak doesn't go supernova. Tomorrow I'll remain there, and it's my 4th green arrow in a row. Go back to Gameweek 8, I was at 1.6 million, and I've way more than I've halved that rank to 404K right now. So I'm feeling great.
It can happen.
I think that, and I think we're going to talk a bit about the importance of budget guys and marginal players, but it really is Salah over the course of those 4 weeks, and the shift of Haaland being out of form, giving me the confidence to captain Mo and him getting in the run of form he has. You have your flourishes with Pedro Porro against Man City, but I really do think just captaining Mo Salah the last 4 weeks has been what's taken me here.
Saved my weeks as well. And so I do want to talk about him. I think we should start off. There's lots of Game Week 12 talking points that we can get into, but first thing I want to say, Brandon, it's like if you had an alarm noise you could trigger right now, but it's a Friday deadline alert. Okay. Ooga, ooga. That's you actually don't even need the sound effects because I
It's
just did
not
it
bad.
perfectly
It's
there.
not
Yeah.
bad.
So Friday deadline alert. Stop everything. Pause the podcast or keep running it. If you're on an iPhone, Brandon, it's now possible to run two apps at the same time. Do you ever when they first got iPod? I don't know if you remember this, Brandon, but like back in like 2006 or seven,
Uh-huh.
you could not really run two things at the same time. Like if you were listening to a podcast, you had to. Well, actually, what was crazy was if you wanted to listen to a podcast, you had to make sure the night before that you like
Yeah.
had it all queued up. You plug your phone into your computer and you literally download to your to your
Right.
iTunes
Yeah.
store
Right.
podcasts and then
Yeah.
drag them into your phone. And if
Sure.
God forbid you get on the subway without a handful of podcasts preloaded. But I feel like you couldn't like listen. Like if I wanted to listen to a podcast and then
Yeah.
open up an app, I had to like pause the podcast. This is a total. This is
Yeah,
this means
you're
nothing.
taking me
But
back to my days playing the two like preloaded games on the click wheel iPod on the subway.
yeah.
It's a
Oh
little game
yeah.
with the guys in the parachutes, and you had to shoot them
Hmm.
out of the
Yeah.
air. Sick!
I remember
What
I
a
remember
sick game
watching
that
I
was.
remember watching the Steve Carell Office on my old iPod, like way
There
back
you
in the
go.
day. Because I got a
There you go.
video iPod and I was so
Nice,
excited to watch video content.
nice.
Yeah, it really got destroyed by the iPhone, like which came out like a year later. It was really you really didn't have a long time with the old iPod.
Yeah. Now we just have too much to do. Now I can watch every Premier League game while doing a million other things on my phone.
Oh,
But we could
completely.
go
You
on.
can
We
you
sound
can
like some
yeah.
real old men here, Josh.
We're only talking about the 2000s. It's not like we're talking about like something that happened in the 80s or something like that. Anyway, so stop everything now and set your bus team, right, Brian? In case you get hit by a bus in the
Yes.
next couple of days, you want to be ready to go for that Friday deadline. Make sure you get those transfers in. It's a little tricky with this Friday deadline too, just because we do have. Like part of me wants to just like make my move now and just not think about it again. But you do have a full slate of Champions League matches and Europa League coming up in the next couple of days. So you really do have to, proceed with caution, right? And make sure that you don't, like, I don't know, do anything too drastic. I still might make the move in the next day or two. My move is actually pretty easy for this week. I won't even, I mean, I can get into my squad later, but the move for me is I have like 6 million in the bank. And it's like just because, and the plan was to bring in Saka this last week, which I
Hmm.
ultimately didn't do because, well, for two reasons. One, Trent got injured. And the other one is we didn't quite know that we were going to get Saka. Like he came out in that match, like like he had never been injured in his life, Brandon. Like
Yeah.
like he had
Yeah.
like it was no one has ever looked healthier, Brandon. Like
Yeah.
I don't even know like what whoever like the epitome Arnold Schwarzenegger circa 1978 or something like that. Is he healthy though? I guess he was just kind of ripped, Whatever your own version of healthy is, that's what
Yeah.
Saka was in this match. Incredible goal, picks up an assist later, looked great. And so my move for this week, the move that I plan is just to move Semenyo, who is now on a yellow
Yellow
card
card
induced
suspension. Yeah.
suspension. Exactly, five yellows. I can move Semenyo direct to Saka, and that move is and then Saka, the Arsenal play West Ham. Feels like a good match. I mean, obviously West Ham haven't even played yet this week. They play away to Newcastle tomorrow, but we're recording this on Sunday evening. But it'd be one less day for them. Arsenal are in good form. It just feels like a pretty straightforward move. The only thing that's throwing me off a little bit is, the risk of an injury to Saka over the next,
Hmm.
during the Champions League.
Well, how much wiggle room do you have with your bank account? Can
Yeah,
you just like sit tight? Because Saka's surely going to go up in price in the next day or two.
yeah.
Can you wait that out?
It's a great question. Why don't we check in real time here,
Let's
Brandon?
do it. Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's
Just like
see.
as you're doing that, I'll kind of recap the outlay of Champions League fixtures this week. So on
Perfect.
Tuesday, Man City are at home and they're hosting Feyenoord. And I wonder if
Fine
Pet
horde.
Feinhord. I don't know.
I feel like you're saying that wrong.
Feyenoord.
Isn't it Feinord?
Feyenoord.
Yeah,
Feyenoord.
Feinord. Yeah.
As a rule, no
No,
pronunciation
that's true.
police
That
on the
just it sounded
OSG.
like Thor's uncle on Asgard or something like that. The way you said it. So
Sure,
yeah.
yeah, it's sort of like that's fine, Jord. I'll see you later, Fjord. I wonder if Pep takes that as an opportunity to basically just play a Johnstone Paint Trophy squad
Yep.
at home to Feinhord, because just like they look like garbage and they need to like totally reset. Thanks. Tim actually puts the spelling right in the YouTube chat. That doesn't help me at all. I need some phonetics here, Tim. All right. Also, Arsenal play on Tuesday away at Sporting CP.
Okay.
Amaran, the new Manchester United manager's old squad.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
Wednesday, you've got Liverpool home hosting Real Madrid. So I think we need to talk a bit about Salah captaincy against City in
Yeah.
the weekend. Like, how much is our Liverpool going to be depleted by hosting Real Madrid in what will be a
Yeah.
real showcase? And let's see, Aston Villa host Juventus also on Wednesday. So interesting fixtures. How does that sort of factor into our
Mm-hmm.
Saka decision making? If you can
Right.
hold on until Tuesday evening before the price changes,
Well,
that would be ideal.
I can, but I am, but it would, so it's an interesting situation. This crops up all the time in fantasy, right? Where Saka is set to rise tonight, like within about an hour or so, usually around on East Coast time. It's around 9:30 when these price changes happen. And Semenyo is at 95% to drop. And that's going by our old reliable FPL statistics, which I found
Yeah.
to be very reliable for many years for predicting price changes. There's lots of places you can go to find this stuff though. So that if he's at 95, that probably means he's almost surely going to drop tomorrow, right? It's not a guarantee, but it's very likely. His ownership's high enough. He's out for the weekend. There's no reason not to think that he's going to keep getting dropped by managers. So that's tomorrow, right? And that means that it'll be before Arsenal's match as well. So I either move right now or I cost myself 0.2. And so Brandon, I'm going to do it. I have just done it in real time, Brandon. I brought
Yes,
in.
I love it.
I
I
brought
feel
in.
like it's time you start taking
Yeah.
a few risks here, Josh.
I don't want to listen. The thing is, like, you lose 0.1 here, you lose 0.2 there.
Yeah.
It's suddenly you look around and you're like, wait, I have no money. This happens like every
Yeah.
year. Come February, March, everyone else is bringing in these awesome players, and you're like, I can't afford any of you, And so, and the alternative, I guess, would be, my defense is in some trouble here. I could, in theory, make another defender move, but it's just like, whom, Brandon, whom would I
Mhm.
bring in that would actually be appealing? Now that I've already brought in my one Arsenal defender, I don't feel hugely enthusiastic. I guess I could bring in a second Arsenal defender. That would be one possible. Maybe that might be something I end up doing in game week 13 or 14. But because Semenyo was out already anyway, like I was probably going to have to move a couple of players this week.
Yeah.
Like if I get more injuries, I was going to take a -4 anyway. So you might as
Yeah.
well just move it now, save the 0.2 and be done with it. And so that's pretty much the thought process I just went through in real time on, on this pod.
Incredible.
So yeah, so there we go. There's the squad. Interesting. I have my squad up here for you to take a look at. Interesting question about Raul away to Spurs or Vardy away to Brentford. Who do you prefer of the two? It's an
Yeah, I'm
interesting
going through
one.
this. I'm going through this right now with Emil Smith Rowe, and
Yeah.
it's for me. It's Emil Smith Rowe versus Morgan Rogers, and they both kind of have tricky away from home fixtures. Emil
Yeah.
Smith Rowe actually for me might be Saka by the time we get to the weekend. So what does that mean about the Spurs Fulham match?
Right.
I do think the narrative will quickly change with Fulham in the coming weeks. Like they enjoyed a good run. You can't take away from, how good a squad they are at the moment. But I just think that they're going to crash back down to earth. To have their pants pulled down like that by Wolves of all clubs at home at the Cottage. And you're seeing this happen with Forest a little bit too, where you
Mm-hmm.
think, what it was a combination of both of these teams hitting a good run of form and having a good run of fixtures to boot. Are Forest and Fulham like due to precipitously drop down the table to where we would expect to see them? And so
Yeah.
that's kind of my logic for thinking, yeah, Fulham are not high on my fantasy priority list right now. It's not like, oh, this this team is toxic. You got to get rid of these guys. It just feels like
No.
if I'm going to have a benching dilemma like we have with Raul or
Yeah.
Emil Smith Rowe, I think they're first choice to drop to the bench at this point.
Well, it was a really gross loss for them yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty kind of shocking, honestly. And honestly, it started. This is one of my little talking points this week. So maybe we just jump right into our talking points now, Brandon. One of them is I think that might be the miss of the season for Raul Jimenez. Not because you don't see forwards miss open nets all the time, but he also blew. Well, it was bad from a fantasy perspective, right? Because it was Anthony Robinson to Raul Jimenez, but it was also like the best cross that Anthony Robinson has like ever sent in. It was like
right.
it was a Andy Robertson level left back cross. Like it was perfect. And Raul, and like if he literally not shot, like if he literally just kept moving forward, that would be a goal. The only thing he couldn't do was hit that ball harder than any human being has ever hit a ball in their life, right? Like he tried to eat the ball. I don't even know what he did exactly. It was like no one has ever hit the ball harder, and it crashes off the bar, and it was like it's such a blow, from like a fantasy perspective. And it was early enough in the week that it was like, that if that happens Sunday, like it's like the last match on Sunday, I'm done, right? It's like I'm not like I'm turning the TV off. I'm not thinking about the Premier League for the next 8 hours or so. But Sunday morning you can kind of accept it. You're like, well, he might have more chances, but you kind of also knew there's no way he's scoring in this match. There's no way he's getting an assist. Like that thing happens where you're like, no, this means this match is effectively over. I don't even need to watch it any longer.
Yeah. So interesting notes in the chat. Of course, we have to talk about Steve Cooper being sacked by Leicester, which goes into your thinking about Vardy. Does Vardy benefit from Cooper leaving the club? Has Vardy really only been seeing the minutes he has because for whatever reason Cooper likes him? What do you think?
I mean, who else can score on that team? Like, Buonanotte is awesome, but he's not a forward. I mean, is Jordan Ayew better than Jimmy Vardy? No.
Could be.
I mean,
not historically, but he offers something a little different than Vardy, I think.
But he's like 34 himself, right? I mean, it's not like he's like some young forward. I mean, I don't know that there's like I mean, I don't know. Do you think that Vardy gets benched? Like, if they bring in, I mean, first of all, they probably won't have a new guy in place for a while, right? I also, by the way, it's another harsh sacking for Steve Cooper. This man only gets harsh sackings. Like, what could this Leicester team be doing that's like any better than what they're doing right now? Like,
I think it's a strange sacking. I agree because Leicester are in a position to, sort of do something. And I don't know how much credit that you give Steve Cooper for that, but
I just feel like they've been competing hard. Like they're not even bottom of the. They have 2 wins on the. I was going to pull up the table here. Something I love when there's some kind of ad that ruins my. Yeah, but they're 16th in the table. I mean, I guess they have lost 3 out of 4, but I don't know. It feels a little harsh to me. This second.
If you look at the table, who's below Leicester? Wolves. There's no way Wolves finish below Leicester City this season. So Leicester are 1 position out of the drop zone.
Right.
Ipswich, Palace, Southampton. Southampton are down. We understand that. Palace are probably the wild card here, where
it's hard to imagine them going down, but they just can't seem to put it together, right?
They
many
can't.
Injuries. Yeah.
And then just like the performance Ipswich gave against Manchester United, they were at home, but man, they were ready for that match. They looked incredible.
I know it's so reminiscent of Luton Town last season, where every week you're like, oh man, Luton are great. Like they're so fun to watch. Like I don't any match, and then you look at the table and they're 18th or 19th, and you're like, wait, like they never win. And it's unfortunately it's kind of the Ipswich problem too. It's like they just can't quite put together enough wins.
I think the one thing you'd say for Leicester and the Cooper sacking is they're just trying to get out ahead of what's coming for a lot of these clubs farther down the table. And they're just going to try to kickstart this move earlier than the likes of Palace and Southampton and even West Ham for that matter.
They just feel like an example of a club that came up a little too early, right? Like it probably needed to. It's like, I mean, I feel like we've talked about this in the pod before, but it's like Fulham, where Fulham didn't quite, and now it's kind of perfect for them, right? Because now Fulham have this kind of second bench of Harry Wilson types, right? Like, but those Harry
Mm.
Wilson like bench options were starters a few years ago, right? It was like you
Yeah.
had to kind of build up enough depth that
Yeah.
you had good players who could also come on and help you, right? And
Yeah.
like a team
Right.
like Leicester can sort of cobble together an okay 11, but they can't do anything beyond that, right? And so I think that's, I don't know. To me well, anyway, it doesn't matter. This is not super fan. I mean, fantasy wise, it's a real wait and see. I guess you're right though. Maybe that's just enough to take Vardy off the starter list for this week. And
Hmm.
Spurs. I mean, the beauty of Spurs, why they're so fun to watch this season, is they can beat or lose to anybody, right? And there would be kind of nothing more perfect to me than for them to lose at home to Ipswich, destroy Manchester City, and then go back home and lose to Fulham. Like that would not be surprising at all. That would be one of the less surprising things, I suspect,
Sure.
next weekend.
Well, yeah.
So
If
yeah,
if you look at Spurs, City win, Ipswich loss, Villa win, Palace loss. It's basically just like every other week they're going to win or lose. So by that logic, Spurs are definitely going to get crushed by Fulham in
yeah.
Game Week 13.
I mean, it's we'll see. Like it should be a fun match anyway. Actually,
Yeah.
that's a real like it's not a pure just like it might be the MFFA match of the weekend,
Yeah.
Brandon. Just lots
Totally.
of fun in that one. All right, so let's get to our Game Week 12 talking points, though. I already talked a little bit about Jimenez, but let's start at the top here. Congratulations to Mo Salah, who has officially taken back the crown as best player in fantasy. We had a little bit of back and forth last year. Cole Palmer and Erling Haaland and Mo Salah were all kind of battling for the crown, right? And year before that was the Erling Haaland season, of course.
Hmm.
But Mo Salah, the old graybeard, Brandon, the old 30-something, the short king himself, Brandon, has
Hmm.
come back and taken the crown as best player in fantasy. And my goodness, by the way, speaking of short kings, like he has to be like the fittest guy in the world. Like
Hmm.
he takes off the shirt celebration, and the two thoughts immediately. One is that's really annoying. I'm about to lose. I'm about to lose a point from
Hmm.
him as my captain. That cost me at least 2 points, if not more, right? When you factor in bonus. And the second thought was, this guy is like the fittest dude in the world, right? It's like
Hmm.
it's kind of insane.
Yeah, my wife too came into the living room just as Salah was taking that pen, and then he took his shirt off, and I was like, "Oh, here we go. This is bad." And she just couldn't understand why that man taking off his shirt could be penalized in a
That's
just world.
that thought did cross my mind as well. It was like, oh, this is good for everybody,
Yeah, everyone's winning here.
Yeah,
It's not like
yeah.
he's wearing like a Bet365
No,
shirt underneath or something like that.
yeah.
He's
He's
it's just pure Mo.
it's Mo, exactly. That crosses all genders. It's like it's appealing to everybody. So yeah, it's fun though. He's back in form. It's just fun when he's happy. The Premier League itself is more fun when he's happy and firing. He's just a very lovable player. I mean, I know that I'm not. Neither of us are even Liverpool supporters, right? But I love watching him play. I mean, how could you not? Like
Yeah.
his motor never stops. It's so fun. The first goal he scored was just a classic Mo goal, right? It was just like it's a goal you score when your motor never stops, right?
Yeah.
And you're just like, boom, one little tiny chance here. I'm just gonna poke it, right? And I'm just gonna
Yeah.
poke it just hard enough that no one's gonna get to it in time.
It's funny, he never
Yeah,
really cares how he scores.
yeah, it's true.
He's not like a Iron Robin where it's like always gotta be a curler, even though he can
Yeah,
do
yeah, or like
those bits.
who's the Andros Townsend, right? Where he always
Yeah.
wanted to shoot like outside the box, or
Right, right.
yeah, you're right. He'll score any. He's always in the. It's so funny on corner kicks. He's like the shortest guy on the pitch a lot of the time, and yet he's always right on the keeper. Like there's like he's just right there.
You see him turn to Van Dyke and he's like, "I got this one,
Yeah,
buddy.
I got this one.
This
Yeah,
one's all
exactly.
me."
Yeah, lean back a little bit, please. So that's a lot of fun. I don't know that there's anything else worth owning in fantasy on that. It's so interesting. We're seeing this a lot with these top clubs right now. Man City as well, where you kind of just have one player that you can own on the in the whole squad. Um, And speaking of Man City, I mean, they're kind of falling apart right now. And the question is really, do we need to jump ship on all their fantasy assets, all the non-Holland fantasy assets? Like how you are a Holland owner. I jumped
Mhm.
ship, I think 3 weeks ago now for Mo Salah. So obviously that's worked out really well. Um, although you had Salah as well, so you didn't have to force that move. Are you where are you with Holland at the moment?
I broke this weekend. I've been
Okay.
trying to be eternally optimistic with him as a fantasy asset for the last month, and
Yeah.
even going into this weekend, we talked about Spurs being without their two starting central defenders. Is this an opportunity? Well, the case is pretty much closed at this
Yeah.
point on City as a place to go for fantasy. So I'm over it, and watching that performance by Arsenal and Saka, I am ready to get on board with that.
Yeah.
So, luckily, I have two free transfers. So, my plan for Game Week 13 is Holland to anybody.
Uh-huh.
Basically, if I turn Smith Rowe into Saka, I have 10.7 million to spend on a forward.
Oh wow. So you can bring an Isak even.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
Saka and Isak for Holland and Emil Smith Rowe. And, we'll get to this when we do the preview of Game Week 13 fixtures, but I think Saka, based on that performance that we saw on Saturday, is suddenly right in the hunt for the captaincy for Game Week 13.
Yeah, I know. And yeah, exactly. We can talk about that more later. I think it's between him and Salah, I
Yeah,
think.
totally.
So I have it on
Yeah.
Salah, at the moment, my bus team captain has Salah is Salah, but yeah, I can go back and forth. Partially for me, and this is like the dumbest thing, but it's like if I'm like 50-50 between two options and one plays on Saturday and one plays on Sunday, I often like to go with the Sunday one,
Hmm.
just because it's more fun to have a captain for the last day of the game week. The only exception is if I have plans on that Sunday and can't watch the match anyway. Then I
Right.
then default, and it's amazing. I somehow have five top 10K finishes without while still using this completely stupid line of thinking. So Brandon, you can win in fantasy any way that you want. There's really
Truly.
there's no accounting for dumb luck.
Yeah.
Let's say.
Going back to
Yeah.
City, though, I
Yep.
do wonder, like, and you've said this a couple of times, like, don't worry, Pep is one of the best managers, the best manager in the world. He'll figure it out. Don't you feel like City at this point are not just 1 week away from figuring it out? Like this feels like a project that's going to take the rest of the season for City to
Yeah.
iron out.
I also by the way, I like this Pep signs an extension thing to me is the ultimate. We want to get more money when he becomes the England manager next summer. There's nothing to be about Pep that thinks, oh yeah, he's 100% all in on this project for 2 more years, right? Like it's such a natural stopping point for him, unless he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who's super prideful. Like remember like Alex Ferguson
Mm.
was thinking about retiring the year that Man City won the title, and then
Hmm.
he found that unacceptable, right? So he stuck
Sure.
around to win the title. That was the year they bought Robin van Persie.
Yeah.
So, but
And
I don't.
God forbid
Yeah,
that Ferguson never be in the not be in the stands at Old Trafford in case anyone forget that he
I
built that
know.
club. Like
I
God, for
know.
God's sake, man.
Doesn't he have like some horses to raise or something like
Seriously, yeah,
that? Yeah.
man.
So yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, like, listen, he might be there next season. I hope he is because he's a great. I mean, like the Premier League is not more interesting without without Klopp or without Klopp and Pep, right? I mean,
Hmm.
like Liverpool, it's awesome they're doing well this year, and maybe losing Klopp helped, but from a character perspective, like I still really miss Klopp, right?
Yeah,
He's fun, he was lovable.
totally.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with Pep, but I think the project is clearly in need of a reset. I mean, my thinking is still just that like there's just too much talent in this squad. I guess I underestimated how hard it would be for them to find anyone who could play competent defensive midfield, right? And that seems like that's really the core problem. And I think coinciding with Kyle Walker getting just a bit too old as well is probably a little bit of a problem, right? You don't like. I just wonder if they had kind of peak healthy Kyle Walker. Um, who can sort of do everything, right? He can sort of play as a right back. He can play, um, play some more like kind of possession stuff where he can sort of take some,
Okay. But you're
hold on
not
to the ball a little
suggesting
bit
that
more.
you would like 5 years ago play Kyle Walker in the midfield.
No, I'm just saying that Pete Kyle Walker like draws a lot of attention, right?
Okay.
And can also protect the center backs, right?
Right.
And can
Right.
even
Sort of
play
like
as a center back.
Van de
Yeah.
Ven at Spurs, his speed alone can basically make the pitch smaller when
Right.
they lose possession and like
Right.
allowing
Right.
Spurs to play that high line. And Kyle Walker yeah,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying there.
So
Sure.
and it's not, I don't think it's really working with Rico Lewis either. And so I think they'll probably just try to buy somebody in January, right? And maybe it's like they buy some just someone who can do a job for the next 5
Yeah.
months, and that might be enough for them. Like,
Um,
do I like I still think that the lowest they could possibly finish in the Premier League this season is third. I refuse to think that they will finish any lower than that,
yeah,
and I would bet genuine money on them finishing third or better,
sure.
right? Like, yeah,
Well, all
absolute
they have to
worst.
do, finish in the Champions League spots, and in the summer, they have 9 players in their first team squad who are over 30. Sell
Yep.
all of them,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that will bring in so much
Well, this is
money
yeah. I
that
mean,
Pep can just
yeah.
buy a new squad.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to sell 30-something players though, too, right? Everyone's gotten a lot smarter about this. But like, yeah, but like this is what Ferguson was so good at, right? Was like, speaking of him, right? It was like Beckham, like starting to maybe see a little dip, like sell him, and it's like he was so good at like moving down these 28 and 29-year-old guys, right? And it's like
Mhm,
maybe they should have taken 60 million for Jack Grealish this summer, right? If
mhm.
somebody was part of the problem too is that the Premier League has inflated the wages so much that they can kind of only sell to each other, right? It's like this
Yeah,
is like
or
one of the reasons
Saudi
why these,
Arabia.
yeah, exactly. This is one of the reasons I think why Arsenal were able to get Gabriel Jesus. Well, it's funny in hindsight. I'm not sure how well that deal's really worked out, but Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko, I guess those guys can both like do a job. I don't know. How are you feeling about Gabriel Jesus right now?
Don't care, don't think about him at all sort of a
That's true.
situation.
Not really a fantasy asset. All right. Well, let's move on. This is nothing new with Man City. We talked about it a lot already this fall. Um, Next talking point from this weekend is just how hard it still is to find any decent fantasy assets. I think Arsenal reasserting themselves, looking I thought very strong in that match over against Forest. It was you're like, yes, this is what we wanted to see, and I'm not sure if is Timber defensively stronger than Ben White? I don't know. Like they're pretty comparable, I'd say. But like it really, and Zinchenko played what the first 70-ish minutes of the match. I mean, it was a strong match. I thought in general for Arsenal's defense, and just maybe a reset for them, kind of broadly. And so it's good to see their defense come through. Beyond that, there was really nothing, right? I mean, I guess you kind of low key brought in a Fulham or not a Fulham, excuse me, an Everton defender a few weeks ago, and that's actually worked out, I think, well for you as well. It's been like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're not really getting like bonus points or anything, right? But I feel like you've just gotten clean sheets, like a
Two
handful of
clean
times.
sheets
Yeah,
in a row for Mikalenko at
right.
4.3.
Four point three.
It's just
Yeah,
like insane.
yeah,
Sometimes you look past teams like Everton where you think these clubs are failing, their fans are
yeah,
miserable, they cannot score a goal, but there is still some fantasy gold there, and especially
yeah,
in their defense, be it Pickford or Mikalenko or Tarkowski. I love it. I thought Game Week 12 was actually a great showcase for some budget guys like Cunha at Wolves. Like, how could you
yeah,
not be blown away by the run he's on, capped by that Fulham performance? And he was
yep,
assisting. He was like doing like a full on Harry Kane impression, where it was elite finishing from distance, great movement, but also like bringing his teammates into the play from deep. I thought he was fantastic. Nicolas Jackson, another budget pick that I thought really stood out when we're struggling with these Cole Palmer blanks,
yep.
and who else could we throw in there and
Toss in the mixer.
toss in the mixer? Yeah.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, weirdly, I mean, full like we're getting some of these
Well,
clean
João
sheets from Everton.
Pedro,
Yeah. Oh, right, João Pedro. That's a
he's
great one.
suddenly
Yeah. Yeah.
suddenly he's one of those players where you think like, well, injury prone, they're gonna have to like really work him back into the squad. Nope, he's fit. He's elite again.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
really impressed by him. So double digit hauls from the likes of these guys. And there's just one thing about Timber before we move on from the Arsenal discussion. We were trying to figure out like is how much does Timber offer in the attack? And I noticed he was just popping up in the 18-yard box a lot, but he
Yeah.
was more involved in the attack, like tucked inside. Like he was just kind of facilitating this triangle between Saka and Odegaard, whereas Ben White would be more likely to overlap on the outside. I just thought that was really interesting, and it started sparking this idea that like now Timber could have a decent run of attacking assets in the coming weeks. So I like him as a pick.
Yeah, I like him as a pick too. I mean, he's 5.5 million. I might end up doubling up with on Arsenal and in their defense and getting Timber as well. Let's see. I mean, their fixtures. I don't know. It's like one feels like enough for the moment, right? I mean, West Ham away, good clean sheet opportunity, but I've already
Not
got one.
guaranteed.
Not guaranteed. Not necessarily double up worthy. Man United at home in game week 14. A reasonable chance of a clean sheet in that one. Man United are still figuring things out. We can talk about that more later. Way to Fulham in 15. Again, possible but tricky. Fulham did give them some trouble last year too. And if you factor that sort of thing in, then maybe game week 16, you got a nice run where it's Everton, Palace, Ipswich,
Mm-hmm.
heading right into the Boxing Day. So certainly, by the way, I cannot believe that we're already like that. We can see Boxing Day fixtures in
Yeah,
our
right.
it's finally here. You're right. It's like
Do you
we're
feel like we
past the
keep
international breaks.
postponing this great window for Arsenal? Like it
I
was
know.
supposed to start in
Yeah.
game week 12, and now we're like,
Yeah.
game week 16. That's
To
when
be
it really
fair,
begins.
it kind of did.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
did. It did.
they got the clean sheets and the soccer
Yeah.
return.
Yeah.
And it looks like you got rid of Havertz just in time too.
I
Right?
did.
Yeah.
And good for Arteta for making some tweaks there for sure. I mean, having Odegaard back is probably like can't be overstated how important that is for just the confidence
Yeah.
of that side.
Speaking of Wolves, by the way, just on that on the Cunha front, I mean, they probably have the best upcoming run of any squad out there, right? It's Bournemouth, Everton, West Ham, Ipswich, Leicester in the next five. Great run. So I think Cunha should be, at the top of like that. Actually, you could go Cunha over Isak if you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to hold on to some money and
Yeah.
sort of. I'm not even sure Isak is necessarily a better buy at this point than
Yeah.
Cunha when you factor in form and fixtures.
100%. I'm
Yeah.
very interested to see how Newcastle look Monday
Yeah,
night.
for sure.
And do I learn anything there? But then like neither of them have European fixtures to contend with. So then it just kind of for me, I'm waiting to see what Isak looks like on Monday because
Yep.
maybe Cunha, and then waiting to see what happens if Saka survives the
The
sporting match.
assault and Sporting. Yeah, exactly. Well, they're going to be with a new manager there. And so I think. All right, let's get back to our. Oh, I wanted to say on the Wolves front though, Eight Nuri I think is going to end up being a popular buy now, as it seems like maybe they've started to figure things out a little bit, at least hit a better run of form. And honestly, there's not a lot of great defender picks anyway, so maybe just go with one that has some attacking potential. But I just want to note that he is on 4 yellow cards, so there's a little bit of risk there to buy him ahead of the festive fixtures. As is Nicolas Jackson, by the way, another player who's on 4 yellows. So just something to keep in mind for those two players. If you're, it's like in my case, I have a number of like straight up injured players on my squad, like. I think Konsa's out. I mean, we'll see. We'll see when he's back, right? But but that is something to keep in mind. Is you just don't want to bring in a player and then kind of immediately have a problem you have to solve, the next weekend.
For sure. Yeah. All right.
All right.
Anything else? What did you think of Manchester United
Yeah.
today? New manager, scorer after like a minute, and then
Yeah.
they kind of reverted back to
Yeah, because there's that
Amaran's-
moment where it's like, is Marcus Rashford like, are we going to get like a run of him trying again, or? And I was like, I don't know. He did get the goal though. Credit to him for that.
I liked Amaran's comments after the match where he said his team throughout the match they were thinking too much, and it feels like he wants his players to just play with a little bit more freedom and intuition, which I think is exciting for a player like Rashford.
That's true.
And
maybe even Bruno to a degree.
Totally. But it's bad for their forward assets. Like it looks like Rashford will probably be playing in the middle with.
We'll see. I mean,
Uh-huh.
like this guy is not trustworthy at all, right? And he's like, like he finds a way to infuriate every manager who he plays for. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, so that brings us to well, so you got Bruno, who is
Yep.
the obvious pick.
Yep.
I thought he had a muted match. He wasn't very influential, but it was clear he was quarterbacking everything. So there's
Yep. Yep.
potential. And then there's Diallo, who
Right.
was fantastic, so good.
Yeah, and he was the one I was going to bring up. Yeah, 4.9 million, an assist in each of his last two matches, and 3 bonus points today. So, yeah, fantastic, and classified as a midfielder, correct?
Yeah,
Not
that's right.
100% sure
That's
about
right.
that, but
Exactly.
yep. So, yeah, I mean, a nice like enabler price. Like if you're trying to go kind of all in on, I don't know, like the expensive. Like if you want to hold on to Holland and just kind of like wait until his form turns around. That could be
Hmm.
one option. By the way, you brought in Cole Palmer, who blanks in the early match. Away to Leicester. Now 3 blanks in a row for him. How are you feeling about Palmer at the moment?
Well, I would love for him to have scored that goal that Madueke, for some
Okay,
unknown reason, just like blocked.
I think he was trying to get out of the way, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was. Yes. So fair play to him. So that was frustrating. But listen, if you compare, so if you got the four premium assets, Salah, Saka, Haaland, Palmer, Haaland remains the odd man out because he's not converting his chances and the team looks like garbage.
Right,
At least you could say with Palmer, while he has 3 blanks in a row, Chelsea are winning. They're playing well. They seem to be achieving their goals. Like Palmer is part of
right.
a positive situation. And it to me just feels like this is our fantasy influence on reading the situation. I haven't been watching Palmer and thinking like he's off it and he's not finishing clear cut chances. I see a guy who's
Yeah.
just kind of getting unlucky, and that is it versus Holland, where it's just like some unshakable juju that they can't get rid of.
I know that the box is so crowded. Like it's just like he can't doesn't seem like he can get any space. Like it's yeah, it's
Yeah.
really by the way, it was amazing that I actually it was watching the Liverpool Southampton match where I don't think I've ever seen a bus parked as like thoroughly as like Southampton were trying to park the bus in that match. But I realized that the downside of parking the bus that extensively is it's much more likely that you're going to get a handball because it's like literally you have 11 players, all like 11 players from your squad, all of them inside the not even attempting to like basically play, right?
Oh,
You're just
they'll
you're just
try to
like it's
pass it
just
out. They'll park the bus and then mysteriously try to play it out from the back.
yeah, exactly. It was like it didn't
To
make any, and
who?
I was like, are they even? Because like they were like, someone, one of the commentators was like, oh yeah, they're pinned back, and I'm like, are they pinned back? It feels like they're sort of like they're doing this by choice. But yeah, when the ball's gonna ping around like that, inevitably it's gonna end up hitting someone's arm, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know. It was kind of
Well, where are
interesting.
you at with Palmer here?
Well, I
You're
mean,
cutting a frustrated figure with
well,
Palmer.
sure. I mean, 3 blanks in a row. I think he basically stopped returning as soon as I brought him in my squad, and so it's annoying because he's super expensive,
Hmm.
and I don't know. It's like it's sort of I'm not like planning to move him or anything like that. I would say if I were a fantasy manager who owned neither of those two players, him or Saka, I would certainly be looking at Saka over Palmer at this point.
Hmm.
And but I certainly like as a Palmer owner, it's like moving him is very far from my mind. They have a great run of fixtures up ahead. The only problem is it still feels like there's not like a ton of chemistry among the squad, right? It still
Hmm.
feels like you sort of have it's like like as well as Nicolas Jackson has played this year, it doesn't feel like there's some amazing link up
Yeah.
situation going on with him and Palmer, right? It's like it's kind of like every man for himself, and it's working, right? But I don't quite under like it's like if you were to ask me like what like the sort of like what makes them tick or something like
Hmm.
that, it's like I don't know whether I have like a great answer for you, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
a lot of there's a lot of things going
Just
on.
guys.
Yeah,
They've got some good guys.
get some good
I
guys.
I
Yeah.
I thought it was starting to come together with Neto, with the front three of Neto, Madueke, and Palmer in the middle, and Jackson up front. I mean, it's very young, that sort of like makeup of the team. João Felix didn't offer much the way Neto is just
Yeah.
faster and more dynamic than
Yeah.
João Felix. So getting Neto back into the starting 11 might help.
I think so too. I like Neto a lot. I mean, speaking of Wolves players, right? Like he really helped to make them kind of tick
Yeah.
last season. All right, so do I have any final talking points here? Oh, just Mbomo, nothing to do now. He's got a great fixture in Gameweek 13, but 0 goals, 1 assist. And what I thought was kind of most concerning is he has 1 total shot in his last 3 Premier League matches. 1 shot in 3 matches. That is kind of shocking to me. Like I'm not talking about shots on target here, like literally just a shot. And so I don't know if he's if it's a dip in form, if it has something to do with Brentford's like positioning, if Johan Vissa being back has led to some, I don't know, some kind of evolution in his what they're trying to do. I don't know.
Think of the goals that Mbomo has scored over the last month. The first one that comes to mind was a cross that went in.
Right.
Got
right.
a pen in there. And then you had those 2 back-to-back goals that were both
Were they outside the
insane
box
volleys.
yeah, right. Yeah.
So I guess maybe you shouldn't be surprised by this. Just
Yeah,
like
he's
be
in the
thankful for the
Palmer
good times.
zone. Yeah, I just think he's in that Palmer zone where it's like 11th or 12th in my list of problems is to worry about Mbomo, right? But I did have to point out that he is like, you're not just seeing things. It's not like he's like the underlying stats are amazing and he's just not he's getting unlucky. Like he really hasn't been super involved. Now, granted, you did have a red card halfway through the Everton match, which did change things.
And Brentford, I should say, are like the poster children for horrible away form this season.
Right.
So they at least are back home. They're playing Leicester, that just sacked their manager. So it's like if you still have Mbomo, I'd hold him for that match.
Yeah.
But
100%. Yeah. 100. I mean, like borderline, like dark horse captain potential over there for sure. That'd be it, but I would say, yeah, truly dark horse given his form at the moment.
Yeah.
All right, Brian. Well, let's. So we talked about our teams, talked about the talking points. Why don't we talk quickly about Patreon? I feel like I've done a lot of talking in this pod, so why don't you do a quick Patreon pitch? If you never heard us talk about Patreon before, what is the pitch?
Oh, you're in for a treat. Now, if you're listening to Always Cheating and you like what you hear and you want more Josh and Brandon, say you want a second podcast every week, ad free. Well, that's what you can do at Patreon. Go to patreon.com/always cheating. You can say thank you, get more Always Cheating content in return at the lowest tiers. You immediately get access to our private Discord where we've got lots of different mini leagues and chats to join. And then at the higher tiers, again, you get that extra podcast each week. We do those Thursday night where we're closer to the game week deadline. The midweek matches have been played. Josh and I are closer to making those finishing touches on our squads. And it's just like a fun, vibey sort of episode. So yeah, tons of stuff to get involved in if you go to patreon.com/always cheating. We really do appreciate your support. And thanks to all of you who are already supporting the pod. And we don't shout this out often enough, though, Josh. If you want to join something for free, it costs you nothing. It costs us nothing, too. But the Always Cheating Super League. We love the Super League. It's free to all of our listeners. Use code QVC0ND or just go to alwayscheating.com for more info on the Patreon or that league code.
You said it. All right. Well, Brandon, let's take a look now at Game Week 13. I have a couple of questions from listeners, and I noted before it's a Friday start. So just once again, keep that in mind. Get that team set early. My note here says that it's a wide open week for the captaincy, but I suppose it's really down to 2 players, right? Saka and Salah. Salah, I believe. Now, on the one hand, you're like, on the one hand, just like take everything else away. Like Man City are, despite their like crazy dip in form, a good team, and like it's like there's like this is not the easiest match on Liverpool's calendar, right? And so you can make an argument that like it's just like you might be able to find an easier captain option than Salah. On the other hand, and I believe this, well, at least it used to be true. I don't know if it still is anymore, that he has scored, Salah that is, has scored more goals against Man City than any other club in the Premier League. So it is not, there's no great worry in my mind about whether he has the potential for getting some attacking returns in this match. I think it's very likely that he will. The only question is whether you think that Saka could maybe do a little bit better, right? Just because West Ham are just not been able to figure it out. And maybe they will tomorrow, but they haven't so far this season. And in some ways, having a player in an away match like that is actually kind of ideal, because West Ham are going to feel obligated to go for it right at home a little bit, and that may actually open up some opportunities for Saka where the box isn't quite as crowded. You won't have to weave through 8 defenders and score a screamer the way he did yesterday, right? And so might offer some more opportunities for him. I don't know. And so, I think that they're both great picks. Are there any dark horse captains out there? We talked a little bit about Mbomo. Anyone else come to mind?
In the YouTube chat, BB Defender shouts out a fully rested Palmer versus Aston Villa at home is a potential consideration. Now, of course, coming right off the back of our chat about how Palmer really can't do anything.
His trio of blanks,
but when he's on, he's on. Like, he's got. You ever think about the water pressure? Of course you do. We all think about water pressure in our shower, and I want robust water pressure. I want to feel like I'm getting hit by a fire hose when I step into the shower.
Yeah, I get that.
I feel like that's Palmer. Either the plumbing doesn't work, or you're getting blasted with a fire hose of fantasy points.
Yeah, I think that is kind of what's going on with him right now. It's like there's something wrong with actually you've summed it up very well. There's something wrong with the plumbing at Chelsea.
Yeah.
It all seems to work. You're still getting all the germs off you, right? And like they're still getting their wins, but
like
your
building super is like, I think everything's fine. I don't know what you were complaining about.
Yeah,
you're like, no, this isn't really. It's not technically working, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Chelsea's problem is a fantasy problem, not a Premier League problem, unfortunately. So we'll see. I just don't trust him enough at the moment to captain him. I mean, it's honestly, it's a little similar to what I just said about Salah, right? Which is that like there'd be easier opponents for Chelsea than Aston Villa, but just between the two of them, I would opt for. Salah. I mean, Salah's just an incredible form, right? And Man City are in terror. I mean, to be quite honest, I would be surprised if I didn't end up captaining Salah this week. I guess maybe that's just the boring answer, but it just feels like the right one to be at the moment.
I don't disagree with you, and I would put it at the feet of Arsenal and Saka, because as bad as West Ham have been, I'm just not a huge believer in Arsenal away from home, like that they're going to really destroy a team. Just given some of the like they looked so good this weekend, but the issues that they have, they're still kind of in the back of my mind. And if they were playing West Ham at the Emirates, then no question, I think you'd feel the same way. We'd be sucked toward Saka, but it's like a home and away thing compounded by just how good Salah has been recently.
Yeah, I think it's always tricky in a match like this too, and it looks like I'm going to be starting, Gavardiol as well, and so like a Liverpool Man City match could just be, you could kind of get any like we've seen it all with these two squads over the years, right? They sort of the names haven't changed too much in the last handful of years, right? And so we've seen 4-3s, and have we seen a 0-0? I don't know about that, but we've certainly seen some low scoring affairs as well. So, any thought to like Solanke? Spurs obviously, too unpredictable, right?
Yeah, and Fulham, I don't know what to expect from them in that match, but it is a London derby. They're not a bad team, and the sort of like cadence that Spurs are on. They should, and Spurs will be playing Thursday night as well in the Europa League. And what kind of hangover do we expect there? It feels like Spurs will win that match, but the ceiling is low.
Yeah, they'll have played in the Europa League, and so they might be a little more tired. Some will be coming off the high of the Man City match, whereas Fulham will have had like 9 days to stew over that home loss, right? So Fulham are going to come out firing, I imagine.
Spurs host Roma on Thursday night. Manchester United host Buda Glimt. I think I got that pronunciation right. Thank you to all the Norwegian followers on the Always Cheating Discord. And let's see who else is in the conference league. You've got I don't know, somebody. It doesn't matter.
No, doesn't matter.
Chelsea.
All right,
Chelsea are away at Heidenheim. Okay,
Heidenheim.
that's a location in the God of War video game. So that's really crazy that Chelsea are going into a PlayStation 5 for their Europa League Conference League match. That's incredible.
Yeah. Speaking of video games, I'm as you know, Brandon, I'm not really a video game person, but I did have to quickly shout out a video game adaptation because I watched Fallout. I finished watching Fallout a couple of days ago, and I thought it was terrific. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just not in the right bubble anymore, and everyone's talking about this in some other alternate universe. But I thought it was quite good. If anyone's looking for a fun 8-episode show, if you like Walter Goggins too, Brandon, a lot of Goggins in there.
You're a fool if you don't like Walt.
Fantastic. Yeah, I like the whole show though.
I agree. Yeah, we watched it as well. Totally enjoyed it. And you don't have to know anything. You don't have to know it's a video game to enjoy.
Exactly.
It.
Yeah, exactly. And if anything, I mean, I guess I knew just because I'd heard of Fallout, right? But like I knew literally nothing about the game. Yeah, it's a fun show.
Surprisingly little use of the band Fallout Boy. You think that would be a perfect crossover opportunity?
That's true. That's true. I'm sure they'll rectify that.
Please.
At least use the band as cast members or something next season.
I will be adding them on my favorite social media platform.
All right. Well, let's end things with some questions from listeners, Brandon. Some of this will tie in with stuff we already talked about. So we'll just do some lightning round style. A handful of quick questions here. Travis says, I'm trading in Havertz for someone this week. Says, who would you choose out of Jackson, Watkins, or Isak, or someone cheaper? So are we kind of targeting in on Cunha now? I mean, he's got the form, he's cheap, and they have great fixtures. Feels like it's fairly
it's Isak or Cunha, and that to me is the decision. And that's one of those where I just don't believe in stats enough to base my decision on that. Because I just can't predict who's going to come out ahead. Wolves fixtures are so good. It's weird that it is even a toss-up between Isak and a Wolves forward, but it is because Wolves are in good form and their fixtures are divine.
Football Genius asks about Lewis replacements. He says invest in Kanate or downgrade. What about an upgrade? If you could find an extra 0.6-ish million, going Lewis to Timber, I kind of like that as a move.
For sure. Or reversing the names and going Lewis Hall at Newcastle.
I still can't trust him after starting the season with him, and he was immediately benched. But it does seem like he's maybe earned that spot. I still don't quite believe it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're catching the tail end of Everton's run here. They host. Let's see. They're away Manchester United. There's really no more good fixtures for Everton. Sorry, you missed that one.
Yeah. I mean, eight Nori. I mean, are we like a little too all in on Wolves now? But he at least does offer attacking potential.
I think he's crazy attacking. Yeah, I think he's fun, and I tend to, if you're not going for an Arsenal guy, I would go for as cheap as possible. Mikolenko, Lewis Hall, Nuri. Those guys.
Nuri's he's 4.8 million. He's got 3 goals and 2 assists on the season, and they actually kept a clean sheet last week. So there you go. They got off the schneid, so to speak.
What about Manchester United defenders like Dalot and Mizrahi? So the way I would frame that is, they have a lot of work to do under the new manager, and I think they'll be better for it. But the new manager is going to be trying out a new system, and I feel like that makes players a little basically how the team works. They're going to be a little bit more open to attacks as they try to basically incorporate a new system. So I feel like for the next month or so, you're not going to be able to bank on clean sheets as easily as you thought.
Yeah, I think that does make things a little trickier. And he's like his system, like he's a three at the back guy, right?
Yes, wingbacks.
And so yeah, and he immediately implemented that this week with Evans, Delict, and Mazraoui. So yeah, I mean, and yeah, Delict. I don't know, like maybe when Harry Maguire is healthy, like he's so cheap that like maybe there's something there. I don't know. Maguire actually Maguire's up to God. They brought his price all the way back up, didn't they? He's at 4.9 million now, so like a little less
Just
fun. Yeah, too much.
no,
Yeah. It's yeah, Mazraoui at 4.6. I guess that would be that. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I just don't quite trust them enough though.
same.
Yeah. All right. Foamy asked about triple captain Salah next week. Okay, I think we can,
Cheeky.
I wouldn't, yeah, it's cheeky. It's cheeky. Exactly. So let's see. We have more striker questions. We kind of just talked about that. Okay. How about we'll end this with Marquis de Barber, Brandon. He says, or she, we don't know. Can you have is it a Marquess if it's a female Marquis? I'm not
I
sure.
don't know.
Yeah. The Marquess de Barber says, I'm ready to rage quit on Haaland, uh, taking a -4 to bring in Saka and Cunha. Oh my God, Brandon. It's like looking in a mirror. So he says, smart move or nay. So I won't let you answer. I will do it myself because
Mhm.
I am more objective in this situation. Maybe slightly subjective because I, don't want you to do that well. But I will say, I think that it's a smart move. I reluctantly have to admit it. The question, like basically, like the way to resolve this is, um, how would I like feel if I had the opportunity to bring in these players myself, right? And
Mhm.
I'd be pretty excited about it. And uh, again, I mean, part of the situation with Holland is when you look ahead to the next few weeks, there just isn't one like he can score in any match at any time against anybody, right? Like, so there's no like that always needs to be kind of acknowledged. But when you look ahead to their fixtures, because the question with him, because he's 15 million, right? The question is, can he score? Can he score multiple times in any
Yeah.
match against
We're
anybody,
never
right?
gonna captain
Yeah,
this guy, for like it's gonna take a couple of months for him to get the armband
yeah.
back, and that's the
The
huge problem.
Yeah, the next really great fixture is, I suppose, would be like Everton at home on Boxing Day. And I don't even really know. I mean, Everton are looking somewhat competent, right? So that doesn't even seem like a hugely appealing match. So I just think you can kind of get away with not having him for the next 5 weeks or so. I mean, again, he doesn't have a like he's a perfectly his season is fine. Like he's done 12 goals on the year, but he doesn't have a double digit return since game week 4, right?
Mhm.
So it's just a lot of money for a player who's getting you single digits every single week.
I think, DeBarber's question here, is it smart? Like, this it's such a smart move that I feel like this would be discussed on my favorite game show of all time, Win Ben Stein's Money. You
Ooh,
remember
yeah,
the whole
yeah, yeah,
premise was how
yeah,
smart Ben Stein was? Well, I think, like,
yeah,
if that show was still going, and this question was posed to Ben Stein on Win Ben Stein's Money, he would say,
yeah.
"Yes, get rid of Holland for Saka and Cunha."
I thought you might go like McLaughlin report or something like that.
Sure, the
Some like
McLaughlin
old
group.
school, yeah. Or what's that old like
Pat
William
Buchanan
F.
would definitely be like, "Yes,
Yeah,
Pat, that's a great."
yeah, exactly. Or yeah, or what was the one that William Buckley hosted way back
Meet the
in the
Press.
70s? Was it Meet the Press? Did they Meet the Press
I
host back
don't.
then?
I
Yeah.
don't face the nation. One of those two.
Whatever. Whatever. Yeah, yeah. So all right. I think that we've covered it, Brandon. We looked ahead to game week 13. One final reminder about the Friday deadline, because I just know it catches up on everybody, myself included at times. And so we all have busy lives, and you can forget about it. So just make sure you're okay with whatever squad you're rolling out with this weekend. With that, Brandon, one final note. Well, A, thank you for listening. B, if you'd like to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/always cheating. And C, do you want to thank our producer patrons, Brandon?
As always, a big thank you to producers Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, Dave Wegner, Lodal, our buddy Chris Howell, Andy Penn, Nick Wright, Lazarus Llanos, Jesse Halstead, Brian Chin. Brian, I'll see you on the Press Play podcast tomorrow night.
Oh,
Looking
good.
forward
Okay,
to that.
good.
And I
Good.
highly
Fun.
encourage all of our listeners to tune in, especially the American FPL players. Brian and his team do a great US based fantasy pod. I'll see you then. Also, thanks to Babas Kuhn, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock, Dan Parsons, Terrence O'Donnell, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Ezzy Does It, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Craig Jackson, Caleb Robbie, Brian Clark, Thomas Tislov, Fred Jacobson, Gareth H., Shalin F. Kadakia, Rishi Nigam, Noah and Louise, Travis Grant, Linus Vennerstrom, Matthew Skinner, Ben Coombs, Eric Kite, Rune Sandberg, James Murray Wood, James C., James Holland, the Three Jins, Scully, and of course, Craig at Total Maths Tutoring. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, we noted last week that we made the move.
We got a new producer. Oh my gosh, I forgot to shout him out. Didn't we get a new?
Oh, Francis Francis is back. Francis the man. Glad to have you back.
Almost forgot Francis. So sorry about that. Francis man.
We're typing. We're basically chiseling your name
in real time. Yeah, exactly. In real time, we're adding you to our Stanley Cup style trophy with all of our Patreon supporters.
Fantastic.
Very sorry, Francis. Well, and we'll give you a shout at the top of next week's pod too, as a reminder. So yeah, but thank you to all of our producers. If you want to find the podcast, you can now find us pretty exclusively, I would say, on Blue Sky. That's where outside of the Discord, of course.
Yeah.
That's where we're chatting. Of course, we try to post links everywhere. And so, it's like, will we still post on places like Twitter/Ask? Yes. And some people I've been like a little like annoyed about this, but to me, it's like, I don't know. It's like you said this once about me when I was trying to do something I was feeling a little guilty about. And you're like, we're trying to run a business here. Like, what are you gonna do? It's like you gotta share this stuff out where people are, right? And so that's the long and short of it. So if you see me post on some place and you don't like that place, it's just we're trying to make sure everyone can find this thing. So
yes.
So anyway, but mostly on Blue Sky now. If you haven't joined yet, I like it. It's fun. It reminds me of what Twitter used to be like a few years ago. It was never like it wasn't perfect then, and neither is Blue Sky. But it's fun to be in a place where where it feels like real people are talking to each other again.
Right. No ads. It's just a little bit more DIY, and I think the conversations reflect that. So I agree.
Yeah.
Totally enjoy being there. We'll see you there. And for all this information and more, go to alwayscheating.com. All right, Josh, I'll see you for the Patreon pod later this week.
Sounds good. All right. Talk to everybody soon. Bye. Good. It felt like a short pod, but I was like, what else was there to say? It was like we were doing the questions, and I was like,